All right, hello, metal maniacs. It's the Meista from Brews and Tunes. Cheers. I am absolutely thrilled tonight. I am chatting with the one and only, the indelible Mr. Todd Michael Hall, of course, of Riot V and multiple bands, of course, Harlet and Jack Starr's Burning Star, and the list goes on. Todd, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I got my brew also, although
Oh,
we've been
nice,
talking a little bit, so mine's already going down.
nice. Yeah. What are you drinking tonight?
I just pulled a Heineken out of the fridge.
Nice.
I don't have any drinkers in my house, so I buy a six pack, and it seems to last me a long time because I don't know. I just a lot of times at night when this will sound horrible, but a lot of times at night when I'm sitting there, I'm like, do I want a little bit of ice cream or do I want a beer? And it seems like ice cream wins out most of the time.
Nice. I can see that. I'm lactose intolerant, so beer wins out for me. But but I love ice cream and I miss it quite a bit. No, that's cool. That's cool. Well, how are you doing? How are things going?
I'm doing really well, actually. In the middle
Good.
of kind of a busy summer. It's been kind of a crazy year. I run a manufacturing company for a living, so I have a lot of responsibilities there too. But I felt like I got things, like the first quarter of the year roughly, I was just able to focus on work. We weren't busy playing out or anything. But then starting in April, we started getting some shows, and then we had a tour in May, and then the album got released, and so the excitement's building. And then we had Sweden Rock, and now I've got 5 week down period where I can get some more work done, and then we go to Japan, and then
Oh, wow.
more shows coming up. And that's what I meant to tell you. We have a show that got booked for Denver, and I could have swore they said they were going to couple that with a show in Salt Lake City, but I guess the Salt Lake City fell through, and now
Oh no.
instead of Denver, they might be coupling it with like Seattle or something. So I
Oh.
was like bumming. I was like, oh, we were almost going to be right in your town. So
Yeah. Oh, I would have been there in a heartbeat. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And
it's getting crazy, getting quite a few shows, and almost like what's kind of almost more shows than we normally play because then we got a bunch coming up. We have to go to Europe again in November and South America in September. So
oh
almost like
wow.
more shows that we can handle. It's kind of tough because with a band like Riot, we have to, you have to balance work and then being able to go. And sometimes when you go, you're not really making a whole lot of money. So if you got bills and stuff you got to pay, and you got to try to balance that. It's always tricky trying to make it all work.
Yeah, yeah, I can't even imagine. I mean it's yeah, I mean you're like one of the busiest guys in rock and roll. It's insane. Like, with your schedule. It's and as you mentioned, I mean, yeah, you have a full-time, you run a company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been a little busy, and then I had like here in my local area. I don't want to say like I'm some celebrity or something, but I don't come from a really big city, and I was on The Voice, and so I kind of had some popularity from that. And so recently we had this Memorial Cup hockey tournament from the Canadian Hockey League. It actually we Saginaw hosted it. It's the first time it's been hosted in the U.S. in like 22 years,
Oh,
and
wow.
so they had me sing both the national anthems and America the Beautiful at the opening ceremony, along with the Saginaw Bay Symphony Orchestra. And then on Memorial Day, I played with a local band and played music off my solo album. And
Oh, wow.
then I sang the anthems for the finale, the final game, which the Saginaw Spirit ended up winning the whole tournament too. So yeah, I've just been kind of crazy because in addition to the Riot stuff, I've had some other little things like that going on. So it's just been feeling like a real crazy time.
Yeah, wow, I can't even imagine. Yeah, I that's nuts. I feel I feel inadequate. It's like I'm just sitting around drinking beers and writing about bands.
Well, I found out, well, then I was on my way home from Europe, and I got a text message from this guy, Jimmy Green, who was helping organize things for the Saginaw Spirit. And he's like, oh, and by the way, we want one verse of the Canadian national anthem, which I've sung at hockey games before quite a few times. He's like, we want one verse of it sung in French. I'm like, what? I'm like, I
Oh,
don't speak French, So I had to hurry up and come home, and within a couple of days, like study it up and everything. It's like, oh my God. So I ended up reaching out to a friend of mine who's a singer over in France, and we had a quick Zoom session like the morning before I performed, and he kind of helped me tweak it to make sure it didn't sound because I have no idea what I'm saying, but I just was doing it phonetically.
oh wow. That's
Quand on brasse pour l'épée, I don't know, whatever. it's but it's so that was kind of interesting too. Yeah, it was like,
Yeah.
oh man, I'm so busy. When he texted me, I was just like, man, I'm so busy and I'm so going so crazy on this tour, and now all of a sudden I got to worry about learning French. I'm like, are you kidding me? You know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just the pressure of having to sing a national anthem, and then yeah, like, oh yeah, part of it's got to be in French. We'll throw that in too.
Yeah. Oh, and then when I got there to sing it, they're like, well, they'll be upset if you don't sing it in French. But then if you murder the French, then they'll be more upset. So if you're not 100%, then just do it in English. I'm like, how can I tell you if I'm 100%? I'm like, I don't even speak French. I don't know if I sound not.
Yeah, is this word right? Am I saying this right? Is that accent right? Oh, that's funny. That's hysterical. Well, you mentioned, of course, the in May, I think it was May 10th, the brand new Riot 5 album came out, Mean Streets. I've got a copy right here.
Nice.
Um, Fantastic. I cannot say enough about this album. I mean, most definitely in my top 10 of 2024. This album, and I know we're only halfway through, but I know it's gonna, I mean, it's probably more like top five. It's phenomenal. It's fantastic. Everything about it, I just love it. Um,
Well, thank you very much. We have gotten a lot of great feedback on it. And, the interesting thing is, we actually worked on it for a long time. I mean, there's songs on there that I was sussing out and writing lyrics for and putting vocal melodies down like before the pandemic. So, I mean,
oh,
like we
really?
put a
Wow.
lot of time and effort in it. And there was a couple songs we really had to wrestle with. Love Beyond the Grave was one like that. It was originally called Part of Me, and I killed myself on that song for a long time. And finally, Donnie, it was Mike wrote the music, and then it had different choruses that were I kept Mike, forget it, this song sucks, it's not going to work. I love your head riff, but the chorus, he kept wanting to do something different on the chorus. And finally Donnie's like, man, use the head riff for the chorus. And he and then Frank came up with some melodies and a lyric concept. And then for the chorus, Donnie's like, love from beyond the grave, and all that. And we're like, oh, it all just came together. And now it's like one of my favorite songs on the album.
Nice.
But yeah, so we put a lot of time and effort into it. But it's so hard, when you get close to the songs and you're working on the songs. I mean, I'm actually working on some more songs with Kurt Vanderhoof right now.
Oh, cool.
We're writing some more music together right now.
Excellent.
And he's handing me music and I'm listening to it, trying to write lyrics and vocal melody stuff. And I was just complaining to him today. I'm like, man, it's so hard. I feel like I'm dipping the same well, it's like it's so you get so close to it that you just kind of don't know if it's any good or not anymore sometimes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Just I could that makes sense, especially as a writer. Um yeah, that mean like you read it so many times and yeah, you just start kind of going over things that you miss things. It's really easy to
Yeah, you
miss
start
things.
to lose perspective, and obviously it feels catchy to you, but you've listened to it 100 times or whatever,
Yeah.
and I mean, but the one thing I would say about Mean Streets is there were a couple things for us. The last album, so Armor of Light, I thought Armor of Light had really great songs on it, but the record label had kind of talked us into stacking. I wouldn't say talk that the record label came up with the order of songs. I didn't like the order of songs, but Donnie said, well, let's go with what the record label is suggesting, because they're the record label or whatever. And they kind of put all the double bass songs right in the first, right in a row. And then the more varied songs came late in the game. And to me, I would have preferred more to mix them in and try to get some ups and downs going. And so that part of it was frustrating. And I didn't totally love the drum sound either. I think we were going for a little bit more of a modern drum sound, but the problem that we have is Frank Gilchrist, he's a phenomenal drummer. I mean, his feet are so incredibly fast that even Bobby Jarzombek, who was the drummer in Riot on Thundersteel and all that, he's still really good friends with Riot with Donnie, and he's an awesome drummer.
Yeah.
Even he'll say, "My God, Frank's feet are fast." And so the problem is Frank's feet are so fast and he can play like a machine that if you don't have a more natural drum sound, then people are like, "Oh, it sounds like a machine," and it's like, no, that's Frank playing, but with the drum sound. And so that was something we were really conscious of on this album too. So we actually ended up re-recording all the drums because we got done, didn't like the drum sound again, so we sent them back into a studio to re-record all the drums, kind of at the last hour. so we could get a real good drum sound out of it because we were all just, that was really important to us. And the other thing is we were more specific about saying we wanted to make sure we varied it up a little bit. And this time, the first couple albums, Donnie wrote about 3/4 of the songs on there, maybe close to at least 2/3. This one's a little more half and half. He wrote six, Mike wrote six. So when you do that naturally, the music, and when you do that, Mike writes different than Donnie, so you're naturally going to have more yin yang on it, um, and then we definitely wanted to have like an old school one. We had the lean into it. We actually had that around kind of during the Armor of Light days almost. That one's been around for a
Oh,
while.
okay.
But we just never finished it, never did it. But we're like, now we definitely want to put that one on this album because we wanted to have an old school sounding one.
Yeah.
And but it is kind of funny for me though, because every now and then, like, what was it? Someone was listening to Mean Streets, and one of the people commented on Mean Streets. Well, it sounds kind of like Johnny's Back to me, and I'm like, well, yeah, because Donnie wrote this, and he wrote Johnny's Back. I mean, that's his thing. He writes like a Johnny Saga song on every album, so it's kind of funny sometimes. Well, it sounds like Johnny. Well, yeah, I mean, it was supposed to.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. Yeah, I think it's such a it's such a richly textured album, and just really, and to your point, I think the sequencing, yeah, it's just really well balanced. It's just a phenomenally well balanced. Yeah, and I agree. I never thought about that with because I love Armor of Light, but yeah, it always felt like there was something like, yeah, it didn't feel as balanced. I guess
Yeah.
for lack of a better term.
I mean, I think there could have been a better order of songs. I think that Armor of Light is full of really strong songs, and
Yeah.
individually they're all really strong songs. But I tend to be an album listener, and I don't find it as fun to listen to it from beginning to end on an album because there's a little bit of fatigue for me because there's so many heavy songs in a row, and then the other ones come along.
Yeah.
So that'd be my one complaint. But I think it's got some great songs on it.
Oh yeah.
I'm really proud of the album too. But I just think you kind of live and you learn and whatnot have you. But I do think, like I said, Mike wrote half the songs on this album too, and you're naturally going to get more diversity with Mike writing because he kind of tends to be more in what I would call the Mike DeMeo era, of Riot.
Mm.
When kind of in the '90s and early aughts and some of those types of things. When I don't know how to even describe the music. It had a little more of a I don't know. I don't even know what to say. A little more of a bluesy twinge to it. Donnie's comes from the power metal era. He's the one that was, when he and Mark got together, Mark Reale got together. I mean, first of all, they got together in like the early '80s, '83, '84, and they were jamming together and stuff in
Yeah.
Texas. And Donnie finally got into the band probably around '86-ish. And then Thundersteel came out in '88. And when he got in the band, uh, uh, Rhett Forrester was still on vocals.
Oh,
And
that's
the
right.
drummer was, oh my God, I'm totally forgetting his name.
Yeah, I can picture him. I can't think of his name either.
Yeah, he's
It's
he's
right on the tip of my tongue.
from the Fire Down Under days. Oh my God, it's right on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, and so Sandy,
Yes.
Sandy, yeah, Sandy was the drummer, and but Mark was specifically wanting to move to more of a power metal style, faster and have high singing in that, and Donnie said that Rhett Forrester was like, yeah, this isn't really my cup of tea, baby, or whatever, and said, good luck to you guys, and I think Sandy Slavin was kind of the same way. He didn't want to play a lot of all the double bass stuff and everything.
Right.
So Donnie was really instrumental in helping to craft the sound when they shifted to the Thundersteel sound, and so and then obviously they had Tony Moore on vocals too, um, and they got him because he had a high voice and they wanted a high singer. Because Tony didn't really necessarily have a background in metal. He was more of apparently listened to jazz and stuff. He
Oh,
said,
really?
yeah, he didn't really come from metal. That's what Donnie tells me. I don't, all I know is the hearsay of Donnie explaining to me that he was in like a jazz band, but and he played bass, and I don't even know if he was a lead singer. I think he was doing a lot of high backup vocals, and so they knew he had a high voice, so they tried him out.
Interesting.
And so they kind of turned him into a metal guy, I guess you'd say, because he wasn't really that like growing up necessarily. And I think Donnie said that he even had a beard when they first got him in the band. And they're like, no, you got to shave that beard, you know, because back there wasn't a lot of facial hair in bands. And you know, so yeah, I mean, Donnie was a real important part of that. And so, you know, sorry, I talked way too long, but that's
No,
really
no.
why when you look at the two principal writers in the band, you got Donnie on one side and Mike on the other as far as music. Um, you know, and I know with some bands they just get together and jam, and I don't know, we don't necessarily tend to do it that way.
Hmm.
You know, maybe because you don't have to. I don't know. You know, like Donnie plays guitar really well, and so he's very capable of producing his own demos and you know
Right.
and saying here's what I want for music, and he'll even write you know lyrics and vocal melodies too. It's just sometimes a lot of times he'll give me a something without any lyrics and vocal melodies, and that's when I come in. Mike pretty much Mike never writes lyrics and vocal melodies.
Okay.
Well,
So
he'll
you
write vocal melodies, but he doesn't write lyrics.
so you primarily write all the lyrics then, so
Yeah.
they come up with the riffs, send those to you, or even maybe a demo of a full
Yeah,
song.
usually it's a demo. Yeah, more like a full song. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, and you know, and so like I don't know, on the first two albums, I think I wrote about three-quarters of the lyrics, and this last one I was a little less than that, maybe about two-thirds. But yeah, I that's kind of what I'm tasked with, writing some lyrics, and we work together on vocal melodies. You'll have songs like "Bring the Hammer Down" off "Unleash the Fire," where I think
Mm.
that was the first song that I wrote for Riot, where I wrote the lyrics and I wrote actually all the vocal melodies on
Oh,
that one.
cool. Great song.
So sometimes it happens like that where, you know, but I think for me, I kind of tend to really lean on Mike and Donnie too with vocal melodies because, you know, just like I was saying earlier when you know talking about Kurt, it's like sometimes you feel like you get stuck in a rut and like I don't want Riot to sound like Reverence or I don't want Riot, you know what I mean, or whatever when I look at Reverence, I was 100% responsible for vocal melodies on the two Reverence albums that I did. So I did all the lyrics and all the vocal melodies. And so I didn't want, there's something about Riot that's Riot, and Mike and Donnie are the ones with that tie, and so I need them to help, monitor what I do, so to speak, and make sure that it's not like I can't do anything different, but at the same time, they have a good ear for it too. I mean, it actually leads to semi fights, if you will, because I'll be like, damn it, like we had, if you look at that High Noon song, High Noon underneath the sun. Right. Well, I actually had when it gets the chorus. My chorus was "Showdown at first light. Better get your sleep tonight. Showdown at first light. Bring your guns and be ready to fight," or something like that on this break. And I'm like, man, and I had this cool
Yeah.
harmony with it. And I was like, damn it, I really like it. And Donnie's like, no, I want to use my chorus. And I'm like, man, but I got such a good. So I wrote like a whole song, lyrics and everything, lyrics and vocal melodies. And Donnie's like, no, I want mine. And so I'm like, so I appealed to Mike. I'm like, come on, Mike, listen about what you tell me. He's like, no, I think I like the High Noon better. I'm like, really? Why? And to this day, I still think my chorus is better, but whatever. So you win some, you lose some.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do love the fact that it is it's a team effort. I think I think that what makes a very successful band, and a successful album. Not to say that, it can't be done, but you look at like, I don't know, like Megadeth with Mustaine. It's all Mustaine, which, a lot of great stuff, but I think sometimes it's, especially the newer stuff, I think it's lacking in personally because it's all one guy. There's no input. So I like the fact that there's a lot of input from the entire band, and you guys, and kind of have to duke it out a little bit.
Well,
But I think I
yeah,
mean, because of that, you guys create such an amazing sound.
yeah, there's a certain amount of special sauce. Obviously Donnie will write it, but then Mike, translate what he writes into the way he's going to play it and, try to add a little more of a groove or a swing or whatever to it. Donnie does the same thing with Mike's and, hey, maybe we should do this. Obviously, the same thing with vocal melodies. A lot of, sometimes I'll write vocal melodies for Mike's, but a lot of times with Mike, I always tell him, dude, just send me a blank song and let me have a crack at it, and then tell me your melody. Because I'm one of those guys that once you put a melody in my head, I can't forget it, and then it's
Mm.
hard for me to make up something different. So I don't mind hearing your ideas, but I want my cracks at it first.
Yeah.
Uh, and but a lot of times Mike, he just picks up his guitar and he sits and plays a melody along. So it's boom, 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 whatever. And so like actually Love Beyond the Grave is a perfect example. If you listen to that song, you know, under the stars deep in the night, dark spirits singing songs of life, their haunting melodies take flight. That whole thing is one big phrase on one breath, and that's the way I recorded it. I
Oh,
try to do it that way live. It's really hard. Sometimes I have to take a breath during it live, but I didn't want you to hear that breath space during it. So to record it, I just took a nice big breath. But that's because that's the way Mike wrote the melody. He just sat there with his guitar going, baby, baby. And I'm like, Mike, you don't get it. Like, you don't have any breath spaces. You know, you don't have, you know, that's not a vocal line. That's a guitar solo, you know. So yeah, Mike and I got a lot of little arguments and
yeah.
stuff too.
Mike, you're killing me.
Yeah, it's like you're killing me, dude. You can't just stay up high there. And that, Donnie does the same. With Donnie, I have more trouble because like Donnie will, it's funny. Donnie will write a song, and then and when he throws a vocal idea at me, it'll just be like yeah, because like he can't sing high, and so he'll just put it in there. And for him, it sounds like he's being all you know that. But then when I sing it there, because I can sing so high, when I sing it there, if I sing it in the range that he sung it in, I sound like I'm fly me to the moon. You know, I sound like I'm singing a lounge song. It's like I gotta put some more energy to it, you know. And the trouble is though when I take his vocal line and I try to raise it an octave, well then it's too high and I'm way up in the stratosphere and I sound like chipmunks. So then it's like I gotta take his melody line and I have to try to transpose it so that it's you know either up a third or a fifth from where he's doing it. So if you haven't written music, when it's an octave, it's easy. It's a total mirroring of the melody. But when I have to put it somewhere else, then it's like I have to try to get the essence of the melody, but it's totally different, and it makes it really challenging sometimes. And sometimes we have these fights. I'm like, dude, I can't, but we can't do it that way, and it doesn't, you know. And he'll be like, "You're not even trying." So sometimes just to piss him off, I'll just record it in the low vocal where he recorded it and send it back, and he'll be like, "That's not what I wanted."
Nice. That's funny.
Just to
Oh.
show him, see, you wrote crap. Let me do something, you know.
Yeah, would you listen? I've got an idea here. That's cool. But I mean, but you guys create such an amazing sound, and I think it's what I love about modern Riot 5 is it's just so cohesive, and but there's still that nod to the original band or all the different variations of the band over the years. But the cool thing too is I mean, let's be honest, Riot has been plagued by bad luck forever until Riot 5, where it's been the same lineup for 10 years and you guys have produced 3 incredible albums. And I love old Riot, of course, but it just seemed like they were just it was such a struggle for them, like with the record companies, with the vocalists, with tragedies, with
It's
deaths
actually
and
the first time we've had the same lineup for 3 albums. Now
yeah.
lately, Nick, he's had some medical issues, and so lately we've been playing live without Nick. But Nick did record all his guitar parts because fortunately they were recorded before he had his issues. So and so yeah, so we've been it is in that regard, I think it's pretty unique. But I think that's also why we kind of blossomed a little bit on this album, because we kind of like it's like we've learned each other a bit, and we've had a lot of times playing out. And it's like it's like having brothers. You fight sometimes, and you love each other, but you're in battle together, and so there's that bond. But there's egos, and there's whatever. There's all sorts of stuff, but you just kind of fight through it together and you make it happen.
What I would imagine, and I'm not a musician, but I would imagine it's tricky in terms of, because in the one sense it's a business, but then it's art. So you have all this emotion and creativity involved, but then you also have a business side of it. And I would imagine, yeah, a lot of times there's going to be headbutting because, those things don't necessarily line up well sometimes, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing is, obviously we're very serious musicians. Like I was thinking tonight, like a couple years back, they asked me to sing the national anthem at a local event here, and when the announcer introduced me, he's like, "International recording artist Todd Michael Hall," and I'm just like, Well, I mean, I guess technically speaking, yeah. I mean, have had albums released all around the world, but it's not like I'm selling millions of copies, so it feels goofy to me. And I think that's what's funny about Riot. And on one hand, yeah, it's like we're known like in a lot of countries. I mean, I get
Yeah.
messaged by people all over the place, and we played South America back in 2016, and people were singing along to "Take Me Back," which was a song I wrote with Mike on Unleash the Fire. And I'm thinking, okay, wow, people know us. And but even then, it's not like you have, millions of listeners every month on Spotify and you're making tons of money. And so, I mean, I think that's part of the struggle is that what it's really more of a passion project for us. And so, you, one thing I would say is it's difficult enough to have five, reasonably headstrong people be able to, and creative types be able to get along and stay together and make it all happen. But then when you've got each one of us has a family and each one of us has a job and all these other responsibilities, and now you're trying to book shows and things and oh that weekend and this weekend and all this, oh it's too many shows and oh, I need to pay my rent, I don't have money, whatever. And the minute money woes and all that stuff comes in, I mean, I think people have no concept of how difficult it is to really hold a band together, at our level, because you're not like making a ton of money. I mean, if you're a foreigner and you're playing all the time and you're making tons of money or something, okay, I mean, no, that's probably a little easier. um, but when you're sometimes having to be like, well, okay, how much are we gonna make? All right, well, I'm gonna lose this, but whatever, I mean, there's always those little trade-offs and things, and we're not always like first class in it everywhere we go. I mean, obviously when we play in the U.S., I'll be driving the minivan to Chicago with the guys in it. I don't own a minivan, I'll rent one. But just to say,
Right.
we played Pittsburgh earlier this year, and so just to kind of I figured, well, we're gonna have to rent a minivan once we get there anyway. So I'm like, hell, I'll just drive to Pittsburgh. So I rented a minivan, drove to Pittsburgh, picked the guys up, then drove them back to Saginaw to play a show, and then drop them off at the airport, and away you go. What I mean? We're
Wow.
doing stuff like that. It's not like we got drivers and tour buses and limos and all that kind of crap.
Right. Yeah.
So that just makes it, it just adds a little bit more stress to everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I was curious, how did you come about joining Riot? When, because you joined in 2013, so it's a
Yeah.
little over 10 years. Yeah, how did that happen? Did you audition? Did they ask you to join?
Yeah, basically what happened is there's a fellow named Bart Gabriel, and the second Burning Star album, he's from Poland, and his wife Marta Gabriel is in the band Crystal White.
Oh,
It's her
great
band.
band. Great band.
Yeah, and Marta and I did that one.
Oh, they have that
Uh,
amazing song together.
I can't remember the name of the song, but yeah, the Star is Born song, whatever. Tell me something, girl, whatever that one.
Yeah.
And so I've known her for a while. Actually, in Burning Star, she played guitar. When I was over in Europe playing a couple shows with Burning Star, she actually was the second guitar player
I
too.
never knew that. That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. We played a couple shows in Greece, one in Italy, one in Germany, and stuff. And she was our second guitar player. And I think she was the second guitar player a couple times.
Wow.
And so in any event, so she's a sweetheart. And actually, she made like all the custom leather pants that I wear, in Riot. She made all of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so but she's kind of gotten out of that. But like, if you remember on Armor of Light, those outfits we had with the red stripes on them and everything, she made the tops and the bottoms,
Oh,
the
cool.
pants and all the skirts
That's
for
really
those.
cool.
But in any event, so Bart Gabriel produced the Land of the Dead album that I did with Burning Star. And so
Okay.
when I went to and Burning Star played the Keep True Festival in Germany, and I met Bart in person. That was in April. And I think about a month or so after I got home, he was like, "Hey, did you know that Riot's looking for a singer?" I'm like, "Wow, I didn't even know they were still doing anything because I knew Mark had passed away, and I wasn't sure that they were still doing anything." And he said, "No, they definitely are. They're trying to put it back together." And so Bart was kind of friendly with Donnie Van Staveren, and he'd been wanting to produce a Riot album. And so they talked and exchanged messages. And Bart said Bart had suggested other singers to him too. So I mean, there was a few, and they had tried out somebody like Tony Harnell was even
Oh,
apparently it was there was talk of Tony Harnell even joining Riot.
huh.
But he wanted to do something different. He wanted to do more of a Soundgarden type of thing. And Donnie's like, well, no, we're not going to, we're going to
Yeah.
the power metal, And so that didn't happen. But in any event, yeah, they ended up suggesting me. So Donnie and I hooked up and talked. I recorded vocals. I auditioned by recording vocals for 3 songs off of Immortal Soul. I think it was Steal Your Man, Wings Are for Angels, and the song Riot. I recorded those. Donnie liked them, so then he sent me, okay, well, here's a couple demos, and there were ones where he had written the lyrics and vocal melodies pretty much. I think he had maybe another singer singing on it. I have to go back and look at it, but I recorded those for him, and then it was odd. I really didn't hear from him for a little while. He wasn't communicating much, and then all of a sudden he came back to me. He's like, yeah, man, I sent those demos off to the record label and they liked them, so we're good, man. We need to keep going, and so here's another song. So here's some more stuff. And so that's when he handed me, that was like September, I think, of late August, September of 2013. And I think one of the first songs he gave me was Bring the Hammer Down. And that's where I wrote lyrics and vocal melodies for it. I've joked before because I remember I just had this distinct memory of listening to the music in my car, and I was dropping my kids off at elementary school, and I'm like, bring the hammer down. And I'm coming up with this vocal melody while dropping my grade schoolers off at, my daughter is 21 now, but they're going to be 21. And so, yeah, so I was writing songs to them and recording with them and demoing the record label before anybody ever announced me being in the band. And then they did announce me being in the band in November of 2013. And basically, it was kind of an announcement that we're going to continue. We're going to use this Riot 5 moniker and stuff. And, in hindsight, the Riot 5 thing is kind of problematic because if you look at Spotify, there's 2 accounts. Then there's a Riot account and a Riot 5. Right. Yeah. A lot of people think it's Riot V. It's Riot 5, but it looks like a V. It's a Roman numeral V. And so what sucks is, like, obviously, okay, I'm not going to lay claim to Fire Down Under, but certainly Donnie wrote a lot of the songs on Thundersteel and Privilege of Power. So we have that connection there. And Mike's been in the band ever since like 1989. So he has a connection to all the albums. And so it kind of sucks because our listeners get split between that and then the Riot 5, So it's like, in hindsight, I kind of wish we wouldn't have done it. But I think at the time, it seemed like it was, we were real worried that people would be upset for us to continue. And the reality is people really just call us Riot now anyway. And, so it doesn't really matter. And I'm not upset about the 5 thing. I get it. All I'm saying is it makes it a little inconvenient in some instances, because it creates a little bit of confusion.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, I don't know. I don't want to put words in people's mouths, especially somebody that's passed on. I think Mark would love what you guys are doing. I think it definitely has the spirit of the traditional, old music, but then it's very modern and just, it just rocks. It's such a perfect band. Really, you guys just kill it. Especially watching live performances of you guys. I haven't seen you live, unfortunately, yet. I will. But yeah, just seeing live performances, it harkens back to that early era, but then it's, this big new sound, and I think you guys are doing a great job and keeping the legacy alive which I think is important, but also doing it your way, which is also important too. So I think you guys are doing a great job, and it's very respectful the way you're doing it. I think it's great. I think it's really cool. And I love the fact, I have to say this too, I love the fact that not that he went away, but the fact that we're putting Johnny on the covers. Like Johnny the Mighty is going to be on the cover. I think that's great. I think that's, because it's the weirdest mascot ever.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
We toughened him up a little bit for the Mean Streets. You look inside, there's like a picture of him where he's looking a little more angry. But yeah, the funny thing is, I never met Mark. I didn't know Mark. But the guys have shared stories with him. Even Frank, our drummer, who wasn't necessarily known for being in Riot years ago, but he was on the Army of One album, and he and Mark have spent a lot of time hanging out together. And then when Frank was in Virgin Steel, and Riot had tours together, so they have that connection. Obviously, Mike was in Riot with Mark for many years, and Donnie has a history with him as well. And so they tell me stories about him. And so in ways, I feel like I know him. And, the one thing I would say is I mean, I can't speak for Mark, but I can speak as a musician. Like the thing that I feel the most passionate, like first of all, I run a manufacturing company for a living. I don't need to make money from Riot. So money from Riot just really doesn't matter to me at all. I mean, obviously, I don't want to be taken advantage of. I don't want other people making a ton of money on me or whatever. I mean, if there's money
Right.
to be had, for sure, I'll take it. But my principal thing is I just love to perform and I love to reach people with my music. And that's the thing about Riot that's attractive to me is it is alive and it's still going. I mean, I've had people call me, do you want to be in this tribute band or that tribute band? And that's cool. Tribute bands are awesome, whatever, but for me, I have this motive. Like I write and I have this motivation to write. I mean, obviously you can see I put out 4 solo albums. I got another one coming out this fall. I mean, so it's like
Right.
I like to create. And so when I was in South America and people that don't even really speak English were singing the Take Me Back lyrics to me, that's meaningful for me. And just feeling like you write a song that can touch people and reach people and maybe become the soundtrack to their life, the way other albums that you really loved in your, growing up and throughout your years have been the soundtrack to your life. To me, that's what's critical. And so, with that being said, I gotta believe Mark is the same way. He never made a ton of money doing it, but he's influenced a lot of people. He's written a lot of incredible songs. He loved all they ever tell me about is that he loved to work with other musicians. That's why you'll see other people that contribute with writing. That's why you'd see his style change. He'd get a different singer, and then his style would change because he would do stuff more in tune with what would sound good with that singer and stuff. And um, I gotta believe that he's smiling, thinking that his music is still getting played and it's still out there. I mean, interestingly enough, after 3 albums now, we're the point where, like, if you look at a set, like if we've got a set of 15 or 17 songs, I think like the tour we did in May, I mean, there was really only, I think it was 3 or 4 songs. I think it was three, like Swords and Tequila, Warrior, and there was one other one. I can't remember Outlaw maybe or something. There was basically oh no, Restless Breed, I think.
Oh,
So there was basically 3 songs of the 15 that were written before anybody in the band was in the band. But basically either Donnie or Mike or whatever was in the band when 12 of the 15 songs that we played were written and recorded. So because sometimes people are like, oh, you guys are just a tribute band. It's like, well, come on. I mean, I understand Mark was really important to it, but good God, you know, Donnie, has a history of writing songs on Thundersteel and Privilege of Power, and then
yeah.
Mike's been in the band since '89. It's like you really want to deny these guys the ability to kind of be able to play with this band that they put so much time and effort into.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I
but I mean,
agree.
ultimately, it's up to people. All I'd say, all right, it's music. I mean, if you don't want to listen to it or you think it's not cool, I mean, that's your thing. I mean, we're doing it for the right reasons. I mean, we're doing it for a passion, for the passion of it, and to help continue the legacy. We're not doing it because we're making lots of money or scoring chicks or anything like that. That's
Right. Yeah. And I think that's important. And yeah, like you said, I mean, yeah, it's yeah, and you're creating really great music. And in your own right. I mean, there is that, this, the legacy of the band, but at the same time, like, yeah, there's a difference, with the sound, and you guys are creating a amazing, big, bold, beautiful sound. And yeah, it's great. I love all eras of the band. And yeah, and I think you've really revitalized, um the legacy in a lot of ways, because I think, especially in the early 2000s and late 90s, like, you didn't really, I mean, even though there were albums coming out, it was everything, it was kind of buried, with
yeah.
what was happening then. And now it just feels very vibrant. And yeah, I think it's great. It's really cool. um do you have obviously there's, fan favorites you kind of have to play, but do you have any particular, like, favorites as far as the old stuff that you like to sing, that you really enjoy singing?
It's tough for me because there's just a lot.
Yeah, it's a huge catalog.
Yeah, because like my first of all, I love Guy Speranza and I love the Guy Speranza era. I always say it's tough for me because like people are like which one's your favorite? It's tough because I really like Tony Moore era too, but there's just something about Guy that's really neat. And my iPod's on random in my car. Yeah, I still have an iPod, sorry.
Me too.
I haven't moved to streaming yet. I don't know why. I should. My daughter was just yelling at me, "Get Apple's music for the family so we can all have it." It's like, I probably should, because I probably listen to more new bands that way. But I still buy CDs and whatever, you know. But in any event, Altar of the King popped up on my thing, and I was like, "Oh man, we used to play." Because when I first got in the band, we used to play that a lot more often. I'm like, "Oh man, I love that song." And you know what's funny is I have this little book that I keep where I put all my lyrics for Riot songs. As I'm learning, I print the lyrics and I learn them, and then I literally carry that book with me in my book backpack, which is stupid because I never open it. I never read them on the road, but I always have them with me. And that book has got like 60 songs
Wow.
in it. So there are 60 songs that I have performed live with Riot. So I
Wow.
mean, and that well, first of all, we've done the entire Fire Down Under album, and we've done the entire Thundersteel album. So
Oh,
and
wow.
we performed the entire ones before, so that was part of the trick. But there's just a lot of songs that we went, and the goofy part is there's a ton more. We barely scratched the surface of the Mike DeMeo era. I think we've done 3 or 4 songs from that era, and there's like 6 albums.
Yeah.
So there's just a ton of music and a ton of great music. I would say for me, um, I definitely, it's really tough because that's one thing that's awesome about Riot is you have that old school, but then you also have the power metal because I love those too. There's something fun about we drank till the sunrise, rode away singing Johnny's back again. And you're that's black leather and glittering steel, and it's like this pounding metal, but just with this beautiful melody floating it over
Yeah.
the top. It's like, oh, that's just so classic Riot to me. But then when you listen to the old school stuff, it just had a lot more. It was heavy, it was fast, but it had kind of a little more groove. We always talk about Riot as kind of being two things. You have this Riot and you have this Riot, like, and then you have that, I mean, so it's hard. I love the mixture because what it does is when we play a set, we can mix in a song like Outlaw or Take Me Back or Alter the King, and then you could play Black Leather and Glittering Steel or Angel Eyes and all these different songs, and somehow it all just works together. And what it does too is it makes for kind of a cool dynamic because the set kind of has ebbs and flows, so not everything is pounding and not everything is just rocking. It's just makes for a nice mixture. So
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm very fortunate too in that the Riot catalog just fits my voice really well. I mean, there's not too. I mean, there's a couple songs that I would shy away from, but for the most part, um, I they fit my voice really well. And so I don't really labor to sing them necessarily. Actually, oddly enough, that some of the harder ones to sing are some of the ones I've recorded with them because I'm always trying to really go for it, and
Right.
uh, I think for me, generally speaking, when it becomes tough to sing, it's usually because of breath and or maybe staying in the same range. So probably the classic one that I'm really scared of is Riot from the Immortal Soul album, just because when Tony Moore recorded it, he like the lyrics are kind of over top of each other, and I know he pulled it off live on the ship one time. I found a video of it when they did the 70,000 Tons of Metal cruise. But it's like, man, I try to sing that thing live and I get vocal fatigue so quick because he's got Tony and I have a slightly different pocket. Um, and so like I have a lot of I'm really comfortable singing the Guy Speranza stuff. God, there's a certain hey note that he always hits. So tequila, that he sings in that range, and that range is a good range for me. Like I'm real comfortable there. Whereas Tony, I don't know if it was at his break point or not, but he didn't like that range. But then again, he'll take something like Riot, where it's like just like that, and it's like, oh, he just stays up there, and then it gets too tiring for me sometimes. So, but in general, the Riot back catalog it fits my voice really well. So I'm
Yeah.
very fortunate with that.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's great. That's cool. Um, let's switch gears a little bit. I'm really curious about like well let's take a ride on the Wayback Machine. Um, tell me about like kind of how this all started for you. So I know your brother's a musician as well, but did you come from a musical family? I mean, apart from you and your brother, like
Well,
kind of
not
how did this all
really.
start for you?
Yeah, not really. I mean, my mom always loved music, so we were always listening to music, but she didn't play. And then, yeah, my older brother John, he passed away in 2020, but he was always, leading the edge and playing guitar. He got really good, like he took some guitar lessons, but like he was one of those guys that could play guitar by ear, just listen to songs and then figure out how to play them and all that.
Wow.
Me and my other brother took piano lessons when we were younger. Um, and I don't know, I just always sang. I was always singing everywhere I went. And I would do it in school and academic track when I was in grade school, what have you. And we always had choirs. I was in Catholic schools when I was younger, so we always had music class, and so you'd sing with the choir teacher and what have you. And then as I got older, like I was playing piano from like 9 to 13. I remember like a Barry Manilow and Lionel Richie and stuff like that. And then obviously as the late 70s and early 80s hits, my two older brothers were starting to get into rock, and John was listening to Ted Nugent and Van Halen, and my brother Rick was listening to Styx and REO Speedwagon, and so yeah, we just started having all these great influences, and it was just, I mean, I think you're probably at least close to my age. I mean, I'll be 55 in September, and in the 80s, just all this great rock music came
Oh,
out. It was all over the radio, and everybody loved it. It was like everybody loved rock. It didn't matter. The music scene wasn't all splintered like it is now. And but in any event, just a lot of great music, and so my older brother was in bands, and so I don't know, I just had that desire, to get out and sing, and so I did get in the band. I got in the band with my brother when I was like 15. So I performed, like, this January that's coming up will be my 40th anniversary of like the first time I performed live with a band. I mean, it's
oh, nice.
hard to believe, but yeah, when I was 15 years old, I performed live with them at some local bars and at some bars in the area and that. And it was ridiculous because I was like in school, and I'd play out and not get home till 2 o'clock in the morning, and then have to wake up at 6:30 to go to school. And
Oh, jeez.
it's nuts. I mean, it wasn't all the time, and I was doing really well in school, so my mom was down with it. She was okay because I was always a conscientious student, and so I did that. I think I only did that for about 6 months though, and then I got burned out on it, and then they wanted to play out more, and I think it was more than I could tolerate. So they got another singer, and they were doing their thing, but in the meantime, what had happened when I was really young, like I remember when I was in seventh grade in academic track, I sang the theme song to Annie. That
Yeah.
tomorrow, that one. I sang that with like just full on little boy voice. Like I just sang it. A cappella even. That was what I sang for academic track. I had a really high voice. And then I was a very late bloomer. I really didn't start going through puberty till I was about 15. And so when I first sang in the band, I still had what I would call maybe kind of a tenory type of voice, but I didn't have like the high notes. And the stuff was becoming popular. I remember when we were playing, we had a weird mix. We'd do Bryan Adams, but we'd do like Twisted Sister, I Want to Rock, and we'd do Red Hot and Heavy by Pretty Maids, and all sort. It was just a Rat, Round and Round, whatever, all sorts of stuff. And I didn't have my head voice then, so I wasn't able to do like real high notes. And so after I got out of the band when I was 15, I took classic vocal lessons for like half a year, trying to learn how do I access head voice, how do I do this, and I just kept driving around in my car and trying and talking to people, and I was singing along to the beginning of I would sing along with everything in my car, right? And I was singing along to the beginning of Take Hold of Flame by Queensryche, and they
Mm.
and they hit that big note, which I just hit in falsetto, but I hit it in like a head voice, like a louder, powerful note. And I was like, oh my God, how did I do that? Whatever. And I came home and I remember showing my brothers I could do it. And then it was like, I just kept practicing and learning how to get it higher and learning how to pronounce words there and do all this crazy stuff. So I just kind of really, because what had happened to me too, also when I was 15, I saw Queensryche open up for Kiss at the Saginaw Civic Center, where I live, and
Oh,
it was
wow.
on the Warning tour. And I remember watching Jeff just wail these notes, and I remember just sitting there in awe, like, oh my God, I got right down on the floor, and I was really close to the stage, but I was on the side of the stage, like not right in the middle, I was more toward the side. But I remember coming over the side and hit notes and all this stuff, and I remember just like, oh my God. And so yeah, I was just on this total quest to sing that stuff and to be able to sing higher like that. And finally, about the time, like I said, I was about 16, 17-ish. I guess maybe creeping up on 17 when I was able to sing higher like that. My brother's like, hey, I'm done with cover tunes now. I got these original things going on. You want to sing in the band? So we actually recorded a demo when I was a senior in high school. We recorded a demo, 5 songs, and it was called Virgin Wings. And then when I was a freshman in college, we recorded 25 Gets a Ride, the full length album with Harlet.
Okay.
And in
Cool.
1990, we recorded another 4-song demo too. And then it was like when I graduated college, and it was 91, and my brother's like, maybe we should play cover tunes just to play out again. So we started playing cover tunes, and we play, 3-hour sets and all this kind of stuff. And
Oh, wow.
the music scene was changing so much then, and we were writing songs, and we did end up coming out with another album in 1994, but we changed the name of the band to Pulling Teeth, and the album was pretty eclectic. It had stuff that sounded like almost new wave, and stuff that sounded like Black Sabbath, and some stuff that sounded like almost industrial and whatever.
Interesting.
It was too much, and so that was kind of my thing. And then actually around 94, 95, I was kind of done. My brother, he got all into Pantera and wanted me to. I'm like, dude, I can't sing like that. I can't sing the scratchy, growly vocals. It just is, my voice is hopelessly clean. It just is. And so I split with him. Not like we were upset, but it's just like, yeah, well, go do your thing. And I was real busy at work anyway. I had been working full time since 91 when I got out of college, and that was a really busy time for me at work. But in 96, I started taking guitar lessons because I was like, man, I got this musical motivations. But John was always the one that wrote the music, and I wrote lyrics and vocal melodies. Well, now I don't have someone to write the music. So I wanted to learn more about it, because when I was younger and I took piano, I kind of blew off all the theory. So when I went back to the guitar in 96, I'm like, all right, come on, I got to learn the theory and how to construct the key and do all this and do that. And I'm no major music expert now, but I know enough to be dangerous, and I can play guitar, like I can strum chords and all that. I can write songs. When I write songs by myself, though, they usually come out like a pop song because I'm writing with an acoustic. But I'm not good at like metal guitar and rock guitar because they're like so precise. They just play these 2 notes. I'm used to strumming the whole thing, and
Right.
they can mute all of them and only play this one string or only play 2 strings, and it's a type of technique that I just haven't practiced, and I'm not that good at it. But yeah, so that's so I wasn't really doing much, and then in the early aughts, that's when I started saying, God, I'd love to get in a band again. I started kind of sending stuff to various bands looking like they were looking for a singer, and that's when I saw my brother, my one brother Rick, the next one up. My brother John's 4 years older than me. Rick's like a year and a half older than me. Rick saw a post that Jack Starr was looking for a singer, and it was for an album that was going to get put out on Magic Circle Music, and which is owned by members of Manowar, and I'd been my brother Rick and I both been huge Manowar fans since like '83. So basically, Jeff Tate and Eric Adams were my 2 favorite singers always.
Oh, cool.
I had other real favorites. Tony Harnell was up there, and you know. Tony Mills from Shy, and I like Michael Sweet from Striper. I mean, lots of singers, but I mean, my 2 ones that were really the ones was Eric Adams and Jeff Tate. And so when I saw that, Rick's like, well, if anybody can appreciate your style of singing, it's these guys. So I sent it in. And, when I sent in a CD of some of my songs, there was a guy named Manuel who worked there, and he heard my CD, and he liked it. He liked what he heard, so he kind of took it to Joey DeMeo and said, "Yeah, I think you should listen to this guy."
Cool.
And Joey listened to it, and he liked it, and so that's when I ended up getting a call. And actually, I just did a post on it in Facebook because I hit the 20-year mark, because Memorial Day weekend in 2004. That's when I had a call with Joey. I had, before that weekend rolled around, I had gotten a call from Joey DeMeo's assistant, whatever, and she was like, "Oh, I'm trying to schedule a call with you and Joey DeMeo." And I remember being like, "Oh wow," like for me, I'm like, "Holy shit, Joey DeMeo, you kidding me?" And I remember I was right in this room that we're sitting in right now when I had the phone call with him. I remember sitting there, and I took notes, and he was like, "Yeah, you're like a diamond in the rough. I think you could have a good career, and it's great, and we'd like to fly you up to the studio so you can record some tracks and all this kind of stuff, and we can get to know each other." And I was like, "Well, if I come up there, do you think I can meet Eric Adams, because he's like one of my favorite singers?" And so yeah, I ended up flying up to their studio. I actually I'd been traveling so much for work, I had frequent flyer miles, so I just got my own ticket to Albany, New York, or wherever it was, and well, they're in Albany, but I think I flew into somewhere else, and somebody picked me up, but whatever. Um, and I remember going to their studio, and it was their old studio. They have a newer one now, and maybe it's new again, but it was their old studio. It was at an old piano factory where
Oh
they have
wow.
a and I remember going there and getting in the studio and meeting Joey. And like I said, for me, it was so weird because I had known these guys. I mean, like I don't look up musicians as heroes, like but I mean, obviously, if you really like someone's music, it's kind of cool to meet them and talk to them. And
Yeah.
knowing from '83, from '83 till 2004, I had 21 years of, like to me, their first 7 or 8 albums are just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I went to the studio, and then like here I'm in the studio singing, and then Eric comes in, and I'm meeting Eric, and I'm talking to Eric, and they got this big, and it's like it's like your typical thing where there's like the booth, and you're in the booth singing with the microphone and all the sound editing, and on the other side of the glass is the table with all the knobs and everything, and they're sitting in there, and there's the glass, and you're looking at them. So here I am, and on the other side of that glass, Eric Adams sitting there watching me sing. I mean, it was mind blowing is about the only way I
Yeah.
can describe it. I mean, to me, it's a real high point in my life. And actually, the note there's a song called "Day of the Reaper" on the first Burning Star album that I did, and there's like kind of a higher screaming note at the end. It's like an A5 or something, and I hit that note and recorded that note while Eric Adams was sitting there watching.
Oh, that's cool.
That's the one they ended up keeping and using on that song. So, because I remember asking Joey afterwards, you think you're going to keep any of this? And he's like, no, no, we'll redo all this. But they ended up keeping that one. So,
Nice.
yeah, so it's nuts. So I have some kind of cool memories of that. But it's hard to believe it's been 20 years on it.
Yeah, yeah, that is crazy. That's the Defiance album, right? Is that the album?
Yeah, yeah. Well, what's nuts about it is that I was there in 2004, and then I went back and I demoed and I worked on all the songs. I bought Pro Tools, like I said. Joey's like, buy Pro Tools. So I started recording at home and doing all this stuff just to do demos. And I'm like, what is going on? Like all this time. Because meanwhile, I'd never even talked with Jack, and I still hadn't. I'd never even met him, never talked to him, nothing.
Oh, really?
And yeah, it wasn't until much later that I then talked to Ned, the bass player. So Joey's the one who picked me to be in Jack Starr. Originally, believe it or not, there's a guy named Scott Oliva who actually sings for Reverence now, my old
Okay.
band. He was in an Iron Maiden tribute band, and he was actually the guy that Jack and Ned had kind of picked and had dinner with, and he was going to be in the band. But um, Joey's not a big fan of Iron Maiden, so I think maybe he
Oh.
didn't like that. So, I don't know. I'm only speculating there. But in any event, and nothing against Scott, he's a real nice guy, great guy. But Joey wanted me to be in the band, and it was kind of weird how later on then Scott Oliva ends up getting in Reverence, after I
Yeah. Wow, what a weird, yeah.
yeah,
Small world.
it's a very well. Riot's the same way. I mean, Mike Torelli was in Burning Star, and then he sang live for Riot for a year or so.
Oh,
And
that's right.
then I got in Burning Star. Rhett Forrester did a solo. He was in Riot. Then he did a solo album with Jack Starr, and then I did albums with Jack Starr. So yeah, it's this ancestral little pool of singing.
Yeah, that is crazy. That's really why. Yeah, I forgot that Red did that album with Jack. That's funny.
Yeah,
That's really
but
wow.
and actually that's part of the reason I knew Jack and wanted to be in the album because I bought that cassette in 1984. My brother Rick and it was a goofy looking album. I even told Jack, I'm like, man, if you had a better album cover, when I met Jack in person for the first time, I flew to Florida to meet him and we played a show or did something, and I brought my cassette with him, and I had him sign it from like 1980, my 1984 cassette. And I remember teasing him. I'm like, Jack, man, you and the fedora on the cover. I'm like, this doesn't. If we'd had a better cover, this is back in the '80s when people bought albums based on the cover.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, yeah, I know. He says I probably sold a lot more if I had a cooler cover. Because it looked like it was a blues album or something.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
but,
That
but
is
in any event, yeah. So what happened is I ended up talking to Ned, the bass player, about a year or so later because nothing was happening. I'm like, what's going on? I finally talked to Ned, and well, then come to find out, I don't know, Ned and Jack got sidetracked on some country band thing and whatnot have you. And so I never actually went to the studio. Nobody got around to trying to actually record this album for like 3 years. I ended up going to the studio in 2008 to actually record vocals, and then I finished up some vocals in 2009, and it got actually released in 2009. So yeah, I mean, from 2004 to 2009, 5 years went by. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's
Um,
insane.
yeah, it was goofy. I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, I was because I had put demo vocals and sent Joey this thing and just nothing. Crickets. I wasn't hearing from anybody. And yeah, come to find out, like I said, Jack got sidetracked by some country band or something.
Did the track list change between from when you did the original demos to what actually got released?
Nope.
Oh,
Nope.
okay.
Nope. Same
Oh,
song. I think
that's
we added
wild.
one. There was one song we added late in the game. Oh God, what was that? Blood something or other? Black Clouds of Thanos. Da, da, da,
Hmm.
da. Black Clouds of Thanos. I'm pretty sure that got added to Defiance right at the very, very end. That was one that we added at the very
Okay.
end. But other than that, all the other songs were the same ones that I had worked on originally. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, that's
Yeah,
fascinating.
it's weird how long things take sometimes, but that's what it's like when, I mean, when you're, whatever, Bon Jovi and you're doing it for a living, well, you stay on track and you get it going out or whatever have you. But when you're us hobby guys, stuff gets in the way, you get sidetracked and
Right. Yeah, when you've got your own, yeah, all your own lives and companies and yeah,
yeah,
all, side
exactly.
projects and yeah.
Wives and kids and parents and whatnot have you. I know Jack. He is. When I first met him, he was living down in Florida with his mom, and not because obviously he couldn't move out. It was more like his mom was older and he was kind of taking care of her, and she actually just finally passed away. She was like 103 or 104 or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like
Yeah,
very recently.
yeah, it
Right.
wasn't long ago that she passed away, but he lived with her. So obviously, he's helping take care of his mom. There's stuff like that. So there's always something. It's that's the thing. Musicians are people too. So all the same issues and problems and quirks and whatever that people have, musicians have them too.
Yeah, yeah, that's well, Todd, I don't want to keep you all night, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about, 'cause, and you mentioned it earlier in the interview, but yeah, your involvement with The Voice. And I know you've talked about this a lot in different interviews, but I was really curious, like, how did that come about? How did you get involved with The Voice? I mean, that was what, it was during the pandemic, it was 2020. Yeah, what made you decide to go down that route?
Yeah, well, it was actually it was in the, blissful years. The funny thing is it's coming up on 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's weird for me is I think about it as I was in Riot, but man, I was only in Riot 5 years, I guess, when I tried that, or a little over five. And you know, I think for me it was like I didn't really watch a lot of those shows on TV and stuff. And and this is going to sound really stupid, but part of the reason I don't is they frustrate me a little bit because I would watch and I'd think, man, I should be trying that, and I think I could do that, and stuff like that. And but with stuff like American Idol, I could never do it. I was always too old for that show. And so I don't know with The Voice, I hadn't really been watching much of The Voice, but I don't know. Somehow I got an email or something, and my sister or something, and she was like, "Oh, this thing's coming. You should try out." And I was like, "Hmm." And and I was working on solo music and stuff at the time, and I thought, you know what, my solo music's a little more pop oriented. Maybe this makes sense to try to get some exposure that way, and um, you know, and so but they just had back then they were just doing these open cattle call things. I mean, they would do video stuff too, but they were doing the open cattle calls. Now, since the pandemic, they've gone to a lot of virtual type auditions and
Mm.
all that. But I actually just ended up. It was a weekend in Chicago. I drove to Chicago in June. Actually, it's almost exactly 5 years now. It was in June. I drove to Chicago. I remember looking, my daughter had soccer tryouts the one weekend, which she just did last weekend. And then this weekend, which is this weekend now, exactly 5 years later, was the free weekend for me. And then, like, the next weekend, I was leaving to go to India to see my wife's family and stuff.
Oh,
And I
wow.
had this one free weekend, and I was like, God, I wonder. And I called, uh, you know, my wife didn't seem to have much input. I called my mom. My mom's like, well, do you think you would enjoy it? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, then go, what the hell, and so I just drove to Chicago on a Saturday morning, and I booked, online to have the afternoon because I thought, well, my voice can be in better shape in the afternoon. I don't want to sing in the morning, first thing in
Yeah.
the morning. So I drove to Chicago, parked near the Navy Pier, went to the convention center, and there was 800 or 1,000 people in the afternoon session, something like that. And they just
Wow.
brought us 10 at a time into little rooms and had us stand up, one by one, stand up a cappella and sing something. If they liked what they heard, they told you stick around, the rest of you can leave. And they liked what they heard. And I walked in and I sang Jukebox Hero a cappella.
Oh, nice.
And so then she was like, all right, well, we need you to come back tomorrow. I'm like, tomorrow? What? Like, I drove to Chicago, which is like a 5-hour drive for me. I didn't bring a toothbrush or anything. I figured I'd just go there, try out, go home. Well, they wanted me to come back the next day and audition to tracks so that they could then film it and have something for the producers to look at. So I had to drive home, and I'd never sang to karaoke, so I had to find. I'm like, what are tracks? And one of the kids like, oh, you can just download them off the internet. So I found like Journey, Don't Stop Believing. I think Another Thing Coming by Judas Priest. I think it was a Bryan Adams song, something like that. Whatever. I don't know. I just found 3 songs and I sat and I talked my dad into drive me back, and so he drove me back to Chicago, and I sat and listened to songs, studied the lyrics. I wouldn't screw them up, and I went to some studio in Chicago, and they filmed me singing it, and they liked what they heard. So then they asked me to do like a video interview so they get an idea of what I would talk like on camera and that. And then it was like, all right, well, the executive callbacks will take place in August. So, I'm like, oh my God, I got a tour with Riot in August. And the funny thing is, like, literally, I was supposed to leave Monday morning to fly to New York to rehearse with the guys and then leave Wednesday morning to fly to Europe. And what happened is they end up calling me on like a Friday night. I remember it's just like tonight. It was a Friday night. I got done working out at the YMCA, got to my car, and I had a voicemail message. And the voicemail message says, hey, this is so and so with Novelty Casting, calling to see about getting you out here for an executive callbacks. And I was just like, dude, I remember just being really excited. It's kind of funny, you get a call like that in your voicemail, you're like, holy shit, you know. So it's funny how excited you get over these things. I mean, it's kind of a big deal, it's national
Yeah.
TV. And I remember calling her right away and be like, okay, and I said, but you know what, I got this and that, and when can I go? Well, the thing is, like, she's like, I'll tell you what, because I'm like leaving for Europe, because if I couldn't go, I was gonna lose my opportunity. And but then they're also telling me I'm sworn to secrecy. I can't tell anyone anything, or else.
Oh,
And they made me sign non-disclosure agreements, and they threatened me with a $500,000 fine if I would tell stuff and da da da. So I couldn't tell anybody anything. And so she said, well, I said, listen, I have to fly to Europe on Wednesday. I said I was supposed to go to New York on Monday. I could skip that. I said, but I just have to be in Detroit, or I have to be in New York. I think, yeah, it was New York, to catch my flight on Wednesday. And so she said, all right, well, we can do that. And so they arranged. I flew out on a Sunday. I was there Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday morning. I think it was Wednesday morning. I had a red eye. Tuesday night, I had a red eye. I landed in Detroit. Then from Detroit, I took a quick flight to actually, I think I changed my ticket, maybe even too. I don't know. But in any event, I remember calling the guys, said, guys, I have a family emergency. I'm like, I cannot rehearse, but I will meet you in Europe. And they're all like, man, I hope everything's okay. And like, I couldn't tell them. I couldn't tell them.
right. Yeah.
And so the whole time I'm in Europe that August, we had like half a dozen shows, and I'm like sitting in, because at the executive callbacks, they told me you're going to come back for a blind audition. And I was like, in September, and I was like, at the end of September, and I'm like, holy shit. So I came back to Europe and flew there knowing that I was going to get a blind, going to go back for the blind. I didn't know for sure I'd be on TV, but I knew I was going to go back for the blind audition process, so to speak. And I couldn't tell them. So I remember being so excited wanting to tell everybody, but I couldn't tell anybody.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so I ended up going back in September. And then when I went back in September for the blind audition, that was like a 3-week process. And the funny thing is, I had a gig in Japan during it. And they didn't want me to go. I had to be there. So I'm like, come on, I got this show, in Japan. I have to go. And and I remember normally when we go to Japan, we will arrive a day early so that, then we can sleep the night and then play the show. And I remember telling the people at the Voice, like, all right, if I cut off a day, I think I could shave off a day. If I do that, is it okay? Because they weren't going to let me go. And I'm like, look, I can't, this thing, gig, I can't let all these people down, and there's big money on this. And so they're like, okay. So I flew in, I landed in airport at like 2 p.m. and got driven straight to the show. It might have been 1 p.m., whatever, but I got driven straight to the show, and shows are on early in Japan because they trains, they don't want it to be late at night. They'll catch trains and stuff. So I remember I drove straight to the show, and we had to do a special acoustic set. So we'd never done it before, acoustic versions of songs and songs I'd never performed before. So I arrived and had like a half hour, maybe an hour to try to practice these songs with the guys a little bit before we went on at like, I was like 4 o'clock or something like that.
Crazy.
It was crazy. And then I performed the show and hurry up and ran right back to LA. I mean, it was just nuts. I mean, it was a kind of a crazy, interesting time. And so, yeah, so I filmed it. And then obviously I got through the blind audition, but nobody knew. At that point, though, I could start telling the guys because they wanted me to get pictures and things of my life and videos. And then I had to get releases from people, so their image could appear on, TV and stuff like that. So obviously I started to tell some of my close people at that point. But then I went back in January and did the battle round, the knockout round. I was there for like another 3 weeks then. And so the pandemic hadn't started. And so my blind audition actually aired on February 24th. And then my battle round was coming out in March. And that's, my battle round came out after the pandemic started. And then my knockout round came like in April, and the pandemic was in full swing. And so then I was supposed to go back to LA in April, but that all the kibosh, and they sent us like tablets, and we were recording, in our living rooms and stuff like that. And really that season 18, it really kind of destroyed, because all the performances after the knockout rounds were done in like your living room or your back porch or whatever have you. And it was, they did the best they could, but let's face it, when you're performing in the studio with a live band and all the stuff, it's just much cooler.
Yeah, because I think, I mean, the cool thing is the video is out there on YouTube. I know, like when you performed Jukebox Hero by Foreigner, I mean, you just you just hit it out of the park. That's such an incredible performance. I mean, just truly amazing.
Yeah, what was quirky about it is, like, on the 2-year anniversary of the performance, when they posted it or whatever, they took the videos down. And I believe it, nobody's ever told me officially, but I believe it has to do with sync licenses, like maybe they pay for the right to be able to play that, because when they play it, they're earning the money from it because it's a universal product. But technically speaking, it's Foreigner's song. Yeah. So after 2 years, their sync license runs out, and now the rights to the money for that song goes to Foreigner. So they take it down because Universal's not going to try to make Foreigner money. Maybe, I don't know. It bums me out because it had like 4.6 million views, so it felt really good to have a video with so many views.
Yeah.
But I was able to repost it on my own page. But unfortunately, like, I thought the battle round was good too. It was a Tina Turner song. I did a duet with Joey, but that one I can't put up because it's like 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes long, and it's just long enough that I get a copyright infringement notice, and like they'll let me post it, but only people in non-US territories can watch it.
Oh, interesting.
What's the point of that? So I keep telling myself, like, I should make a version where I like stop it partway through and say, hey, and I had to stop this so you can still see, I mean, I just don't know.
Yeah, you should consider that. That would be cool. And then I know you mentioned before too. So of course, it was around that same time. I think I guess 2020, and then your album Sonic Healing came out in 2021. Yeah. Great album with Kurt, and you mentioned earlier in the interview that you're working with him again on a follow-up album.
Yeah. Actually, cool. The follow-up album is done. It's in the can.
Oh, great.
And it's all done. And it will be coming out later this fall. So,
nice.
So that one's there. I actually have some CD jackets and some vinyl jackets in my house right now. I just received them this week. I'm supposed to sign them and then get them back to the record
Oh,
labels.
cool.
But so that one's done. I flew out to LA in February. We filmed a couple videos for it too. So yeah,
Nice.
I'm excited to get it out there. It's definitely in that old school rock vein, very similar to the vein of what Sonic Healing was, you know. So definitely, you know, but the songs don't all sound the same though, you know what I mean? So like it's kind of like, I mean, it's definitely different. There's a few more moody songs, I guess you'd call it, on there and stuff. But yeah, I'm really proud of it. And then, but yeah, I don't know, Kurt. You know, Kurt and I enjoy each other. We enjoy each other's company. We enjoy working together too. So actually, there's some other music we've been working on recently too. That's what I was referring to.
Oh,
That's
okay.
even other music. It's not a Todd Michael Hall solo album. We're just like, you know what? I wonder what it'd be like to do some of this. And so we're just, you know, two guys having fun writing some music together, and we'll see if something comes of it. Maybe a year from now we'll have another interview because I'll be telling you what album I got coming out. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be great. That would be great. Yeah, I mean, if yeah, I love Sonic Healing, so I'm really excited for this new solo album of yours, and yeah, whatever's to come. That sounds great. That sounds fantastic. That's really cool. Well, Todd, thank you so very much for chatting with me this evening. This has been an absolute pleasure. And just really fascinating. You know, for those of you watching, in the description below, I've got links to the Riot 5 pages, as well as the Todd Michael Hall pages. So definitely check that out. If you have not seen, and I can't imagine you haven't yet, but if you have not seen the videos, his solo work, and you know, especially, you know, what he did on The Voice, and also your amazing cover. We didn't even get to this. Your amazing cover of the Triumph, one of my favorite bands. I love that cover too. I think that's on your page.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely check that out. And if you don't have it, go buy this right now. This album rules. Just what a phenomenal album. Again, one of my favorites of this year for sure. But yeah, Todd, thank you so very much. This has been great.
Well, thank you, Victor. It's been an incredible time. I'm glad. I'd say the biggest problem is I talk way too much, so I think I made your interview like way much longer than it's supposed to be. But
No, no, no. This is awesome. Thank you so much.